The Michael Berry Show.
So it has come to my attention. Well, let me start with this. Ramon was on a roll this weekend. I mean, he was teaching a master class on libertarian values, and it was all couched in terms of when he could order a drink. And I guess he was at the Great Wolf Lodge or Disney World or wherever he goes, and he couldn't order a drink till 10 o'clock. And by God, Davy Crockett didn't die for him to have to wait till 10 o'clock, and it was 9:20 at the time. So you get a lot of ladies going, well, if you're mad you can't get a drink till 10, then that's on you. And he's going, lady, this is about Jim Bowie and the Alamo and the whole thing. So somebody made the mistake of saying, well, I guess you took 7th grade history and that's about where you tapped out. Whereupon Ramon's deep pride in the great state of Texas was inflamed. Musket shots were fired. Lines were drawn. William Barrett Travis commentary was invoked. It turned into a moment. It has come to our attention, in 7th grade when you had Texas history, for many Texans, most Texans, that's the most Texas they'll ever know. And then at 40, they go to the Alamo and they're like, okay, now, let's see. Bowie had the big old knife, right? Davy Crockett had the coonskin cap and Fess Parker sang his song. And then, let's see. It was Sam Houston here. No. He was, and then what happened at Goliad? And then what happened over here? That is an important part. Teaching your history. Great cultures teach their history to perpetuate them. It's very important you do that. It increases state pride. There's no greater state pride than the state of Texas pride. It has come to my attention that the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, TEKS, the state standards that spell out what every student has to learn in every subject, that all of that is up. We're on a timeline for that to be reviewed. So oddly enough, when you wake up and go, hey, my kid came home in 7th grade and they're not teaching history, or the history they're teaching is that Texas was stolen from the Mexicans, or the history we're teaching is that Texas is an awful place. How did this happen? It happened because of a lot of boring meetings that you didn't want to go to. It happened because a lot of people were willing to sit on weekends at conferences, give speeches, do this, serve on committees and do this, and it's a lot of work. And then we wake up and there's a real problem. So I reached out to a friend of mine named Judge Ken Wise, who in addition to being a great golfer, like he played professionally, a great shot if you need a ringer to bring to Houston Gun Club for your competition, and a world-class billiard pool player, in addition to those three things, happens to have a sideline as a judge, and he is a Texas history nut. So I said, look, I know you probably don't want to do this because of your judicial role, but could you put me in touch with the right person? He said, I'm going to give you somebody better than me. His name is Don Frazier. He's a PhD in something, badassery, apparently. He's the chairman of the Texas 1836 Project Advisory Committee. Again, another one of those seemingly boring things that are very important. And he's the director of the Texas Center at Schreiner University in Kerrville. And I looked him up and said, Dr. Frazier leads initiatives focused on Texas history, culture, and community outreach. He is an award-winning author and historian with extensive experience in the field. It is our honor. Ramon, do you have some nice music? Oh, we didn't have music ready. Hold on. It is our honor to welcome for the first but not last time here we go. Chairman of the Texas 1836 Project Advisory Committee and the director of the Texas Center at Schreiner University, the Honorable Dr. Don Frazier.
Wow, that's quite the buildup.
Yeah, don't disappoint. Oh, he did You're a Don, as in You're a Don, Marlon Brando, Mario Puzo. You
I
got
like that, yeah. Nice touch.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We're talking in an environment where our discussions are what Trump is doing, what Biden did, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Congress coming back from. But things like this matter, and they matter for the short term and the long term, and they're generally conducted under cover of darkness. And thank goodness we have someone who cares deeply and passionately about Texas history the way all of us do, but is willing to put in the time and effort to make sure our kids' course books and curriculum are doing what they should do. So I got about a minute in this segment, and then we'll dive deep into this. Let's start with the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. Can you explain what that is in about a minute?
You bet. So I'd say that most of this debate's not handled under the cover of darkness, but under the cover of apathy. The TEKS is essentially the guidebook for what we want our kids to know across Texas schools, all 254 counties, public schools, public charters. I mean, it's got an incredible reach.
So how does it come about? How is it developed?
The State Board of Education is elected by the voters. They come up with a framework, and they come up with a policy. This is kind of what we think people ought to know. Then it's tossed over to TEA, Texas Education.
Oh, I got my clock wrong. Hold on.
Implementation.
Dr. Don Frazier, more coming up. Dr. Don Frazier is the chairman of the Texas 1836 Project Advisory Committee and the director of the Texas Center at Schreiner University. So one of the things I read was that Texas is one of the largest textbook markets in the country. So whatever is approved here influences textbooks in classrooms across the country, because as the materials are printed, you want to print something that's compliant with the Texas standards, because otherwise, one of your biggest markets is lost out on. Can you explain how this whole process works for how kids, I don't know, my kids don't need to buy nearly as many books. For the university at UT, where my son is a sophomore now, they buy almost no books. Everything's online, and my son's a senior in high school, and he has a third the number of books you used to because everything's online. But I'm sure the curriculum is still similar. How does that come to be?
All right, so let's start at the wellhead and go downstream. So State Board of Education comes up with policy, and then the Texas Education Agency implements that policy. That implementation is where we get the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills from. And then that goes downstream to school boards, superintendents into the classroom. So that's kind of the flow. And the TEA is tasked with coming up with appropriate educational material to support the policy that has been adopted by the State Board of Education and agreed upon by the legislature of the state of Texas. So it's about halfway down the process is where we get the educational material. Now, one of the things that big publishers, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Well, all right. So one of the things that big publishers like to do is they like to have one-size-fits-all curriculum. So you can get a ghostwriter out of a junior college in Connecticut to write your U.S. history survey book, and it'll sell in Idaho, it'll sell in Iowa. But when it comes to Texas, Texas has always been kind of a one-off. So any way that you can channel that curriculum to where Texas is treated as a one-off, and you're focused just on that, broad American story, however it is told, is a lot more efficient for the big educational publishers. So what we've got now, I mean, if you went to took a look at textbooks now, you've got a lot of Texas sidebars, and then you have a 7th grade Texas history textbook. What's happened, though, in reality is that as Texas is treated as a one-off, that particular piece of intellectual geography in the classroom, those hours that you're spending teaching Texas, end up being cannibalized because people see it as not particularly important. It's not, it's not the big American story. It's some sort of, strange curiosity that if you need to teach your kids something about keyboarding, well, you can do keyboarding and computer skills as the second semester of Texas history, and nobody will notice. So we've had a real decline in the actual amount of instruction over the Texas story in the last decade and a half.
So I'm thinking of, the teaching of youth is very important. And it strikes me that while Texans are more proud of our history than any state in the Union, there are still a lot of people who've been cussed into or cowed into this posture of being ashamed. You know, we've watched our monuments be toppled and our heroes be leveled and spoken ill of. But I think of subjects that you have to teach: slavery, civil rights, immigration, religion, political movements, U.S. Mexico relations, migration of people from Mexico into Texas, and the cultures and the Tejano and all of these things that developed, and how that is taught. You know, AI can't replace that. It will in a negative way, but I think that those are very nuanced conversations that need to be considered carefully so that you don't get some, I'll say this so you don't have to, some crazy liberal woman coming in with a bone through her nose and purple hair declaring that Texas should apologize for existing on indigenous lands. I guess that was a question I've
Sure.
punctuated.
Yeah, it's kind of a question in there somewhere. And really, the root of all of this goes back to our institution to higher learning, because that's where teachers are made. And so, School of Education, some of our flagship institutions, if that's the message that they're pumping into their education classrooms, then those teachers then export that into their public school classrooms. And so it's an interesting intellectual genealogy, but it all starts in higher ed, in my opinion.
Yeah. So is there an opportunity, not to put you on the spot, it may already be, is there an opportunity for somebody out there who says, I'd like to get involved in this process?
Sure.
And if so, what is that course?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you can talk to your elected officials. State Board of Education is probably not on your speed dial, but it might need to be. What's coming up next week is they're thinking about revising the TEKS in what that's called is the framework. You know, what framework are we going to use that we will then decide what fits into that framework in terms of the Texas essential knowledge and skills. And so that happens next week, and you probably ought to send an email or make a phone call to your SBOE representative. I know in Houston, it's Will Hickman. There's Julie Pickering's over in Pearland, I think. So that's kind of within the greater Houston area. But that's step one. Step two, there's going to be working groups that are formed after the framework is adopted. And those working groups are composed of volunteers. And you can lobby to be part of the working group and actually review the various TEKS that are being proposed by content experts. Now, content experts, that's what I did back in 2022. I was a content expert. And what we do is advise on here's what we think the TEKS ought to look like. Then it goes to the working groups, and the working groups come up with the nouns and verbs and specifics. So that's the process, and you can jump in at any time.
Dr. Don
and,
Frazier,
try to be heard.
Hold with me if you can for one more segment. Hang right there.
La Michael Berry Show.
So I have a friend named Larry Bogus. His son Noah went to Shriner. He's a filmmaker, and he made a film for the, 100th or 150th, I guess it'd be the 100th anniversary of Shriner, and asked me to be a part of it using the radio show and a radio piece, and it was fun. He's a great kid, and I love to see young people pursuing things like that. And then I have a friend named Robert Reese, who's a superstar. The term is seller, but he's a relationship manager for our show. I never knew anybody who went to Shriner except for a fellow named Rick Bays, who was my wife's law partner, and I used to play tennis with years ago. Minch of a man, super great guy. He was the only person I ever knew who went to Shriner, and now I probably know 10 people who've been there in the last few years. Is Shriner on the rise, or am I just moving in different circles?
No, we're moving. We're moving up. We've had a long history of punching above our weight, and now we're actually reaching out to statewide audience, especially through outreach programs like the Texas Center. I mean, we're determined to help Texas tell its story, and that means we get involved in a bunch of these conversations like the ones we're discussing now.
You know, the concept of hiding your light under a bushel is antithetical to the academic environment, particularly as it relates to the professor. I think Texas A&M, I'm not an alumnus, but I think they've done probably the best job through the extension service, through the agricultural, through transportation, through a number of different things. They have reached out into every sinew of the state and beyond, using their faculty and their resources and their institutes. University of Texas has a long-standing support of the arts, especially fine arts, as well as literature. There should be so much more to a university than the football, basketball, and baseball team. And it's nice to see these professors who devote themselves, as you do, to a subject, sharing that beyond kids in class who are probably less likely to be interested in it than us old fogies sitting at home reading Lonesome Dove for the third time. So it's nice to see you sharing the wealth and evangelizing.
Yeah, that's we were looking for a way where we could do the most good for the most people, and a lot of people were running away from the Texas identity, and Shriner ran smack dab into it, right through the middle. And,
I love that.
I was recruited down to stand up the Texas Center, and first thing we had to figure out is what does a Texas Center do, and we stood it up actually on the 1st of June 2020. And so I was there at the height of COVID, which meant that I got a lot of time to look around the state and figure out, what's next? What is the Texas story? How's it being told? And got a really good, 30,000-foot view of what was going on across the state. And I came back and said, all right, Texas culture is formed in the classrooms. And we are watching that erode away. And think about it. We're about to be the largest state in the country in terms of population. That's the trend we're going on now. I think it's 1,000 people a day moving here. And these people didn't have Coach Pringle in 7th grade to hand out the worksheets so that you could learn about, Bowie's knife. They had no Texas history. So there's kind of a dual purpose here. One is let's get the culture factory right in the K through 12 space, but also in the K through 16 space. And we're doing a lot of outreach at the college level as well to prepare a population in this state to take care of this state into the future. Somebody's got to know this story and carry it forward. We're not, as they say, we're not worshiping ashes. We're actually passing the torch at Shriner. And we think that Texas ought to be front and center. And that's we're living into that promise.
Was Shriner University hit by the flood? Physically hit?
It was. We were high and dry. I'm speaking to you 1 mile from Guadalupe River. I was high and dry. I was wondering where the rain was falling because I wasn't seeing much in my backyard. And I was heading out to a gathering, 4th of July gathering out in Tarpley, down in Bandera County. And the only thing I saw was that, one of the river crossings might be a little tough, so I was going to delay going. And then all of a sudden the news started rolling in that there was a disaster unfolding just within, nearly rifle shot of my house. And I had no idea.
I was not aware that area was even known as Flash Flood Alley. I have since learned so much about Kerrville and Kerr County. I'm part of a movie team that will be releasing a movie in a few months about it called River of Angels. And I have learned so much about rescue and then, unfortunately, recovery and the nobility of people who do these sorts of things and the area and the history. And it's all so fascinating to me, just absolutely fascinating. Dr. Don Frazier, let me ask you this. I'm going to hear from parents when we hang up who are going to say, I have a young kid who is interested in Texas history. My mother imbued in me a great love of Texas history. And for Christmas, I would get books. I had a teacher, Miss Steed, in third grade, who I would finish the reading early because I was a little dork, and she would go to the library and pull Texas history books on me. I wanted to have a son named Crockett from the time I was in middle school, and I do. And so Texas history is near and dear to me. But is there a site or a resource or things that you have found in budding young Texas aficionados, if not historians, that you would give as a resource to parents?
You bet. We this summer we launched a 250 video series that tells the entire story of Texas from day 8 of Genesis to last Thursday, and we do it in 5-minute chunks. So each video is 5 minutes long, and it's a narrative story. It gives you the entire narrative arc so that you can pick up the plot line on how Texas came to be what it is today. And that is on our YouTube channel, and you can go to our website, thetexascenter.org, and you'll see a link to E Pluribus Texas, which is our big project.
Oh, I had my mic off. Sorry. The texascenter.org. I'm looking. This is a slick website, Dr. Frazier.
It's going to be slicker because we're going to be delivering a lot of curricular content, both for public schools, but homeschoolers, private schools, charter schools. We're leaning into writing curriculum now to go with those videos. So the videos, that's free to the public. We're going to mount those on the website. Right now, they're all available on YouTube on the Texas Center website. But it's about 23 hours worth of content. So think, 3 Netflix series or seasons. And by the time you get done with it, you'll know a lot about things like, why oil is important and what the whole story of the Comanches were, and where does Mexico play into all this, and what was the story behind the Alamo, and what are the implications of that story for the rest of the country. And you'll also learn about slavery and learn about the importance of cotton and all sorts of things. By the time you're done with this 250 video series, you will be ready to be fully immersed, baptized in the Brazos as a true Texan.
God bless you, Dr. Don Frazier, the Texas Center at Shriner University.
You normally smoke, Mr. Biden.
The Michael Berry Show.